But there's a reason why it's unique. And so this came out a bit from me talking to Dr. Malone when I had him as a guest on my podcast, because he knows a lot about the workings of the government, right? It's not my point of expertise at all. And so the best way I understand it, talking to him and piecing some other things together, is that the government was really the driver of the vaccine. So Moderna was basically a spinoff of DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, right? So the idea from the government was, we need to have a bioweapon response. We've got a potential bioweapon threat. Oh, now it's a real threat. It just got released. By the way, we helped fund and develop it because we outsourced it, et cetera. So we caused our own problem, but now we've got to respond to our problem. So, nobody wants to read about this vaccine is manufactured by the Department of Defense, right? It makes you feel like you're in the military or something. It's like, oh God, I don't trust them, right? So they've got to get some actual pharma makers to show up and to push this thing out. I mean, no different than, in my mind, World War II, and they enlisted Henry Ford to start making tanks, right? It's kind of a rough similarity, but this is kind of what the vibe was. So the government basically started Moderna for the most part, and then came to Pfizer and all these other people and said, look, we need to roll this thing out. And they had all the tech. It was all their intellectual property, and really all of their research and everything was, as much as I understood, largely handed to these drug companies to use as fronts to actually deliver the goods to the public. And the drug companies had some of their own reservations. This is, again, I welcome people to fill in the blanks, but this is kind of the best way that I picture the story. The drug companies kind of had some of their own reservations, like, well, this is untested, it's historically unprecedented within medicine, right? Every vaccine requires, typically 10 years in this full process and blah, blah, blah. And the government's like, look, no problem, we'll take care of that. Here's your legal immunity, sign this paper. So this is why everything worked in concert, because it was really coming from the government, right? So you had the FDA acting corrupt. You had legal immunity being handed out to the pharma agencies. You had media totally on talking point and all that, because it was really orchestrated as a national defense bioterrorism response concept, Operation Warp Speed, coming down from the president. It's like Manhattan Project. I mean, it's basically our generation's version of that, in my mind. Now, you can argue perhaps that was legitimate, at least well-intentioned. It was a national bioweapon situation and response, and desperate times call for desperate measures. I'm not saying that was categorically and necessarily bad and evil, but that's why it was so coordinated, and that's why it was so powerful, because again, Big Pharma is powerful, but they're not this powerful.